Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on rules reporting. It's great to have you here with us today. I'm Gabriela, a Senior Regulatory Operations Advisor here at Tamataroi, and Noah is going to be presenting today as well. Okay, I will start by reading one of our Fakatowaki, which is a cultural wisdom that inspires and guides our work here in Tamataroi. Ko te wai aho, ko aho te wai, he whakatauranga tato no te wai, te wai, ko te ora o te tangata, he tonga te wai me tiaki, ko wai tatu, ko wai tato. Awesome. So today we start with some background information. Then I'm going to give you an overview on the rules reporting, and we'll dig into more details, dive into some more details, and finally we'll have some time for questions or patai at the end. So if you have any general questions about reporting, please feel free to send them through using our chat function. Now, if you have specific questions about how to report for your specific water supply or questions about specific rules, please send us by email using this info at email address that you can see on your screen right now. And if you don't have time to answer all your general questions today, don't worry. We are going to get in touch with you by email, and we are going to make sure that we answer your questions. And also, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you want to watch it again in the future, just find it in our website. Cool. So let's start with some background information. So the main goal of this webinar today is introducing the reporting requirements to all the water suppliers, including the changes that we made to reporting. And the main target audience today are the people who are actually reporting to Taumatarauai, so preparing and submitting the reports. Now, we are expecting that you already have some basic understanding to be able to fully understand our discussion here today. So we are expecting that you already understand the drinking water quality assurance rules, always referred to as the rules, and that you understand what compliance with these rules mean. And we also expect that you already understand the two ways or the two mechanisms of reporting to Tamata ROI, which are through our Excel spreadsheet templates or through the APIs when you are using softwares such as Water Outlook or infrastructure data. And also, we assume that you already had some time to at least scan through the guidance for reporting that we published last week. And if you had time to do so, it's going to be very useful today. But if you don't have this basic understanding, don't worry. You might still be able to understand some of these things today. And then when you go back to work and you read the guidance for reporting, things are going to start to make sense. And if you still have questions after you read the guidance for reporting, please email us through that info at email address that I just told you about. And we are here to help. Now, just highlighting again that this session is not going to cover discussion on how specific rules apply to specific supplies or how specific water supplies should report, but you can find all the relevant information that you need on the guidance that is in our website. So go ahead, read it, let it sink in, read it again, and if you still have questions, just email us and we'll do the best to help you. Okay, so these schematics have a brief overview of the rules and reporting. So the rules came from the Section 49 of the Water Service Act 2021. And this section gave Tamataroi the authority to prepare these compliance rules. So actually the Drinking Water Quality Assurance rules, or the rules, are secondary legislation under the Water Service Act. And the rules document was published in 2022, and it has an introduction, some general guidance on how to use the rules. it classifies the drinking water supplies into categories. For example, the very small communities or the networked small, medium, and large supplies. And these categories are normally based on the kind of supply and also the population served by each supply. Now, each water supply category has to comply with certain rule modules. For example, for a networked small supply, we would have the G rules and S1, D1, and T1. And inside of each rule module, you have a series of rules that are classified either as assurance rules or monitoring rules. Now, each individual rule is going to have a rule number, for example, T3.8, and a requirement, which is actually what the rule is asking you to do, is going to have a compliance period and a reporting period, which are normally different from each other. And we have also published a rule clarifications page in our website. So this has a series of clarifications about a few rules and also a few corrections. So if you haven't checked this part of our website yet, I highly recommend you to do so because this should be read together with the rules document. Now about rules reporting. Each rule has its reporting rule ID, which might be the same or not as the rule number. We are going to discuss more about that. And we have just updated our rules summary list, which has all the reporting rule IDs and it's quite helpful for reporting. And we published a parameter and determinant list as well, which is going to be helpful for both water suppliers and for the labs. And we just updated our guidance for reporting, which hopefully you downloaded. And there are two ways to actually get the data to Tomato AI, which is through the Excel templates that I mentioned or through APIs. So let's cover some key concepts. Hopefully you already know about them, but if not, now is the time. So as I said, each rule is either a monitoring rule or an assurance rule. And monitoring rules, of course, they are about monitoring your drinking water supply. So ensuring that parameters and determinants are within a certain range and that your drinking water is safe. So this normally has to do with grab samples or online analyzers and equipment. Now, assurance rules is more about ensuring that you have the right processes in place and the right activities in place to protect the safety of your people and ensure that your drinking water is safe. So, for example, if you have a backflow prevention program in place, you are preventing contamination from getting into your network. Or if your UV units are certified according to one of the certifications that we accept and we can trust, we can know that your UV unit is really going to work super well and that UV disinfection process is working. So each rule is going to have a rule number, as I mentioned before, for example, T3.8, which might be different from the reporting rule ID. And the reason for that is because some rules ask for a number of different things inside of the same rule. So for example, the D2.1-ECO reporting rule ID is going to be asking specifically about the E. coli sampling part of that rule. Noah is going to explain more about that. Cool. So this table summarizes the rule reporting requirements for each one of the rule modules. Quite a useful table. So you can see that the assurance rules are just required to be reported for the level 2 rule modules and the level 3 rule modules. And these assurance rules should be reported annually. And the only assurance rules that you have to report against are the ones that actually apply to your drinking water supply. So, for example, if you have a large network supply, you know that you have different options to comply with the protozoa disinfection treatment. So you don't have to report against protozoa treatments that you don't even have in your water treatment plant, just the assurance rules that are applicable to your drinking water supply. Now, with monitoring rules, you can see that level 1 rule modules, level 2 rule modules, and level 3 rule modules are the only ones that have to report monitoring rules. And there are two different kinds of reporting for monitoring rules. So you are required to report biannually, quarterly, or monthly, depending if you follow level 1, 2, or 3 rule reporting. But you are also required to report annually against all the monitoring rules that are not mentioned in rule G1, G2, and G3. So how do you know what you have to report biannually, quarterly, or monthly, and what you have to report annually? You go to the G rules, and that's going to tell you exactly when to report on each one of these monitoring rules. And again, you just report on the monitoring rules that are applicable to your drinking water supply. So same as the assurance rules, if it's an optional treatment and you don't have that treatment, you don't have to report on that rules. Just leave them behind. And just a reminder that you still have to comply with all the rules that are applicable to you, even if you don't have to report against them. And Taumaturoi might ask for this information in the future if you are undertaking an investigation or if you are reviewing a drinking water safety plan and need more information. So we have the right of asking for that information. So just comply with everything and do your best. Okay, now about time frame and use of data. So the deadline for the annual reports is within 40 working days of the end of each calendar year. So that's going to be around the end of February next year for the next annual report. So this requirement, this deadline is part of the drinking water quality assurance rules, which are legislation. So if you can't meet this deadline, please contact the regulatory team based in your region, and we are going to have a chat. Now, you might be asking, how is Tamatarai going to use this data and how have, have we been using this data? So as you know, we draw information from Hinekoraku for our reports. We had our first report this year on the state of the water industry in New Zealand, and we are going to keep doing that. We also use this data to inform our understanding on drinking water safety and risk and prioritize our regulatory activities. And normally we do that based on risk. We also have some future plans that I was allowed to share with you today. So we are looking at the possibility of sharing a summary of the rules reporting with the water suppliers through Hinekoraku and also make it available to public in the future. So watch this space. And just a reminder that uh, please make sure that all the information, all the data that you submit to us is accurate and all the information in Hinekoraku, because we use this for our regulatory activities. And you don't want any wrong information about your water supplies out there, and we don't want either. So please make sure that everything is accurate and is correct. All right, and this figure is a summary of the reporting cycle. So first, the rules require the water suppliers to report on compliance. And then Tamataroi provides the guidance on how to report and also a reporting system, which is currently Hinekoraku. Then the water supplier goes and selects which rules they have to follow for each water supply. The water suppliers then assess their compliance against each rule that's applicable and reports this to Tamataroi through Hinekoraku through the APIs or through the Excel spreadsheet templates. Now, this is a cycle because based on your amazing feedback, we are able to improve the rules, our guidance, and even Hinekoraku. And this might change the rules requirements for one specific water supply. Now, you might also change your source water for one supply, or you might upgrade your water treatment plant, and that's also going to change the rules that are applicable to your supply. So that's a cycle. You keep evaluating which rules apply to you and reporting on that, and we keep improving based on your amazing feedback. So now I'm going to pass it over to Noah.
Hi, I'm Noah Hensley. I'm the Senior Technical Advisor at Tomato Hawaii. Thanks, Gabby, for that introduction. So now we'll dive into different levels of detail. So first we'll do an overview, and then we'll dive even further into the detail of this guidance. So um, some rules are more complex than others and have multiple requirements. So that's one reason that there's been an update. A number of clarifications have been issued for the rules and more on the way. We've produced this guidance along with some supporting documentation, including a rules summary list, a parameter determinant list, and reporting templates, as you can see on the right there. This update enables us to implement quality checks of data being reported and give automated feedback and measure report quality. The update also enables us to easily check whether you are reporting what you need to be reporting. Many of the rules, so what do you actually have to report on? Many of the rules have multiple sampling requirements and or assurance requirements. For example, rule number T1.8 has 3 main requirements. Each of the requirements is split into each one of their reporting rule IDs. For instance, for T1.8, there's 3 requirements, one for sampling E. coli, one for sampling total coliforms, and one for sampling turbidity. And that's every 3 months for each one of those. You can see the different reporting rule IDs. T1.8-ECOLI, ECOL is for E. coli sampling compliance. T1.8-COLI is for total coliform sampling compliance. And then you have the turbidity reporting rule ID as well. Now you might have noticed I've clipped out a certain section of the rule and table 10 because those actually are under one of the clarifications. It currently says 6 months as a compliance period, but it's actually 3 months. So we've clarified that in our rule clarifications. Um, and yeah, so some rules have multiple requirements. We want you to report against each one of those requirements. And these reporting rule IDs provide clarity on how to submit samples as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It enables a rules by code approach to reduce ambiguity and all requirements. Another thing to think about is all requirements aren't really created equal. Different non-compliances have different risks associated with them. We might be more interested in some than others. So it enables a better understanding of compliance and non-compliance. There's a hierarchy to the reports that you submit. So at the top level, you have the reporting period info and the supply ID. So the kind of unique identifier for your supplies. The submission information as well, who's submitting. Second, under that are the rule fields. So under the rule reports, where you report against each individual reporting rule ID, that's that second level of information. The third level of information is the sample information. So in that sample information contains information about monitoring results to undertaken to achieve compliance. So each report is based on the reporting period and the supply. Reports are submitted via Excel or API, and I'll go through examples of Excel reporting. API is very similar. In fact, it's the same fields. It just may look a bit nicer or it may be easier because Lutra or Water Outlook or some other company has come in and developed a web page or a form for you to fill that out, this information out, and then report to us via them. So at that top level information, we have drinking water quality assurance rules reporting. And these are the details you have to fill out at that kind of top level. Again, it's really important that you fill out the right supply ID. If you don't know what your supply ID is, you can find that information in Hinakarako under your supplies page. So if you go to My Supplies, it'll list your supplies, and on the leftmost column, it'll give you your supply ID. That's the same ID that you should be putting on your reports. Under the level 2, this kind of second level of information, in the Excel template, it looks like this. So these are the fields that you have to report under that second level information. You have to report your rule ID, which is the same as your reporting rule ID. We couldn't change that information because it would have required a much bigger update to our system, which would have cost a lot of money and time. Um, so apologies for any kind of confusion that might cause, but essentially where we say reporting rule ID, we mean rule ID. The supply component information, so that's the supply component ID, also needs to be submitted. Whether and then your assessment of compliance with that rule. And you have a chance to give any notes as well. So under that third level of information, the sample fields contain the actual test results taken for the period that you're reporting under. You submit all the test results relevant to the reporting rule ID. You're encouraged to submit all the samples you take for your supply. You can submit more than the minimum number of samples required by the rule. There's no issue with submitting more samples than you're required to. That might be quite helpful for when you're exceeding the rules requirements slightly, and you don't want to have to go through all your data and just report the minimum number. You can actually just report all of those, and when we look at that, we can assess that. Each sample submitted should relate to a unique and real test result. So I've noticed there's been some reporting of, oh, we've met our limit. So you might put greater than 0.2, but we actually want the actual test result. So when we start identifying those issues, we will get in touch and ask you to fix those. So in that third sample reporting, this is what it looks like in the template. It's actually a different sheet within the template. So at the bottom left, you can see the different sheets. There's a report sheet and a sample sheet, and that's what it looks like. So I wanted to run through a fairly simple example of this and how you would report a 6-monthly report by a level 1 supply. So there's a limited set of rules that you have to report for a level 1 supply, T1.8 and D1.1. You can see there's 5 reporting rule IDs, even though there's just 2 rules that you have to report against, and that's because there's multiple requirements under each one of those rules. The one things I wanted to, sorry, my animations don't seem to be working, so I'll have to go forward and then come back and work them through. I just wanted to highlight this one first. So T1.8 turbidity, they've identified in this report that they did not comply for one compliant period in the January to March 2023 period. So the results back this up because there's only one result, and it's from the April to May period. So they don't have a result for the first compliance period for that report. So they've reported that accurately. The next thing I wanted to highlight is, which may be causing confusion out there, and don't worry, I'm not expecting you to go back through all your reports and correct this for this year. So don't worry about that. Just make that step change and from now on do it. For D1.1 E. coli, they've had an exceedance. So you report that result. But if you notice, the D1.1 dash actually it should be E. coli, is true. So you've met the rule by taking a sample. Whether you exceed the MAV or the standard, that's not in the rule. What's in the rule is that you took a sample, you took it at the right frequency at the right time. And there may be other requirements in the rule. So you want to read the rule as the rule reads. Don't make assumptions about the rule and what compliance means for that rule. Just did you meet the rule or not? We'll know that you've exceeded because you will have notified us of that exceedance of a MAV, as you're required to in the Water Services Act. And we understand that. We'll pull that information through the notification information, and we'll assess all the aspects of your compliance. So with D1.1 E. coli, if you want to, and you really feel like you need to report something as non-compliant, you can put false in the complies with rule under the sample report. So the complies with rule under the rule report, that's section 2, and the complies with rule under the section 3 are actually two separate fields, and they're specific to either the rule report or the sample report. There's other ways to report other than Excel. Lutra has infrastructure data. Water Outlook has a tool as well. There may be others out there. If you are one of those others, please get in touch. If you have any questions about how to access API, or if you want to get your name on this list, that's fine. We're not trying to promote any one utility. This is who we know has these tools. So Water Outlook looks a bit like this. Once you generate a report, you can click and report it. Infrastructure data looks a bit like this. So again, you click a button and you report it. So I kind of went over that really quick. There's a lot that goes into that, and we understand that there's quite a lot of detail that you have to go through to assess your compliance with these rules, to document that compliance, and then actually build those reports. So infrastructure data needs those reports built. So does Water Outlook, and we know that that's going to take some time. Now, if you thought I hadn't gotten into the detail yet, I have a surprise for you. So we'll go more into the detail. And this is getting into the rule summary list. So this is essentially a summary of requirements for reporting on each rule ID. It's quite helpful, actually. Well, I think it's quite helpful, and I think a few of you will find it's quite helpful. If you make it a table or some kind of filterable table, you can actually pull out and filter out all the rules that apply to you. So you might want to look at all level 1 monitoring rules. This table, this list, actually allows you to be able to do that quite quickly. You can access this within the guidance itself under the link under the rules summary list section, which also goes into even more detail than I'm going into in this webinar. So this is what it looks like, and you can see it's just a tabulated list, and we're going to go through all of those fields and what they mean. So you have ID. Again, probably should have labeled this reporting rule ID, but we kind of came to that name in the last moment. And so this is just your reporting rule ID. And all the columns apply. So all the values in the following columns apply to the reporting rule ID. So there's one line for each reporting rule ID. You can sort by rule module. You can sort by rule number. So maybe you want to pull up T1.8 and all the reporting rule IDs under that. This table will allow you to just pull those up. Or maybe you want to pull out a few different rules. You can do that as well. So it gives the level, so you can filter by level. You can filter by parameter determinant. So maybe you want to see all the rules for your supply or all the rules that have E. coli sampling in it. You can pull these out. These are a short form ID for the parameters and determinants. We have another list of all these parameters and determinants, the MAVs, the aesthetic values, the units, the acceptable units, and all that information in another document that supports this guidance. For example, E. coli stands for E. coli. It also gives the type of rule, whether it's a monitoring rule. We've introduced a continuous monitoring type rule because it was quite helpful for rules by code approach, because continuous monitoring doesn't actually require um, samples to be submitted under the report. It can also be an assurance rule. There's a log column, and this is only applicable to level 3 protozoal rules. It's blank if not applicable. The compliance period is also listed here for each reporting rule ID. So this is as specified in the rules. Um, just so you know, we are issuing a new set updated clarifications, and those should be out by the end of the year, just to align this reporting guidance with the rules. Dare I say we've fixed all the mistakes in the rules. We might have missed a few still, but I think we've got most of them now in the clarifications once this update's published. So compliance period, you could have a day compliance period, a month compliance period, a 3 months compliance period, a year compliance period, or maybe it's event-based. Maybe you only have it when you have an event. For reporting period, again, this is straight out of the rules. You have monthly, 3 months reporting period, 6 months reporting period, a year reporting period, and some rules are not reported. You have reporting time frame. So a supplier must report within this many working days from a report period ending. Okay, 10 working days, 20 working days, 40 working days. You have the sampling frequency, which is the minimum number of samples required by the rules. You're always welcome to take more sampling if you feel you need to. Duration between samples. Go to the rules clarification for this. It gives you a bit of an examples of what we mean by this, and I don't really want to go into it here because it's quite a nuanced explanation. Okay, so what are we actually doing with this summary list? Well, one thing it allows us to do is check all of the samples that you're submitting to us at a really high level. So recall that we have reporting rule IDs and we have parameter determinant IDs. So for T1.8-ECOL, the parameter determinant ID is ECOL, which stands for E. coli. So we have a determinant checked field under our rules summary list. 0 means we're not going to check it. So we're not going to check the determinant. You can enter whatever you want, but it's not going to matter. 1 means that the parameter determinant field for any samples reported under that ID must be left blank because you're actually already going to tell us. So the determinant check value for T1.8-ECOL is actually just 1. The ECOL tells us everything we need to know. We know you're going to be reporting against E. coli, so don't repeat it in the parameter determinant field. So really, that parameter determinant field is only for samples which need to be reported, which aren't explicitly required in the rules, and don't have that kind of explicit parameter determinant ID. An example of this is D1.1-chem. You might be thinking, D1.1-chem, what could that be for? So if you pull out your handy rules, which I have here, and I'm sure you have a copy with you, D1.1 has the requirement to sample everything in table 11, but it also has the requirement for any other determinants identified in the supplies drinking water safety plan, including its source water risk management plan. So if you did take any sampling that meets that requirement of the rule, you can pop it in here, enter your parameter determinant field so we know what you were sampling for, and then enter your values and your units appropriately. There's some other rules in level 2 and level 3 rules that are similar to that, and you'll probably know off the top of your head where those rules are. Unit check, we can perform unit checks, so we have acceptable units. We also have in that parameter determine list. So we've pretty much stuck with milligrams per liter for anything chemical, MPN per 100 mil or CFU per 100 mil for bacterial sampling. Zero in this field means we're not going to check that reporting rule ID for a unit. 1 means we will check it and it needs to be right. And that will actually just help with a lot of the initial data cleaning that we need to do. So there's the parameter determinant list, which I talked about. And this lists all the parameter determinants in the rules, the standards, and aesthetic values. It's quite handy. I know a few people have asked for it, but I think you'll find it a good tool to have. You can access this through the guidance, the link in the guidance under the parameter determinant list section. Um, so it's just a table of a whole bunch of stuff, which I'll go over right now, quite quickly. Parameter determinant ID, so this is a short form ID, so say for E. coli, it's ECOL. Title, so this is the full title of the parameter determinant as specified in the legislation or the rules. What is it? Is it a parameter like flow rate, CT, or is it a determinant, iron, manganese, FAC? So I understand determinant to be kind of a New Zealand term, and to mean anything that can be determined in water. Value prefix, so this is when you get a sample result that says less than 1 mpn per 100 mils, say it was an E. coli or total coliforms. It also is for when you exceed the maximum limit of a test. So maybe you had a total coliforms test that came back above 5,000. So you would say greater than 5,000. Just repeat what the lab result says. We would expect most of these are less than or the equal to bit. Hopefully you're not exceeding the detection limits of your tests in most things. And if you are, we might want to think about a different test. So equals and blank is the same, accepted as the same equivalent value in that column. The MAV is the actual maximum acceptable value from the standards. So that's all in one place now that you can easily kind of sort and pull out and search. The unit, so that's the unit specified in the actual document that was the source of the MAV or the aesthetic value. So we've also put in aesthetic values here. Some parameters, some determinants have both MAVs and aesthetic values, so it's quite handy to have all that information in one place. So some of them are mins, some of them are maxes. And then we have another units column, but this is all the acceptable units that we would accept for that parameter determinant. If you have suggestions for additional ones, feel free to email those through or pop them in the chat if you have time. Otherwise, just contact us through email. Then you also have a few more columns on the description, the notes, the source, and the link to the actual document that has this information. Okay. Don't worry, we're almost done. I only have three more slides left, and one of them is a question slide, so hang in there. We have our rules, so back to our rules summary list. We can also check your report and check your samples for additional things. So recall you have your reporting rule ID, T1.8-ECOL. Do I need to submit samples? If you want to answer that question for a reporting rule ID, you go to your rules summary list, you look under the sample reporting column. If it says 1, we don't expect you to submit samples. If it says 2, it means we do expect you to submit samples. And if it says 3, then it's up to you whether you submit samples because it's a rule that doesn't explicitly require sampling, but maybe it requires sampling, say, of determinants that have been identified in your water safety plan. There are a few cases, and this is a bit difficult. We'll fix this in the next version of the rules. But there's some rules where you might think that you should report a sample against that rule. So this is the rules where there's a limit, say you can't exceed 5 NTU. You might think you need to put your turbidity samples against that rule, but we actually want you submitting the samples against rule T.1 in that case. So you submit samples against the rule that requires the sampling. The rules that require you to meet limits are separate rules. They have linkages, I'll admit that, but they are separate rules. So you have to report those separately. So we may give where there's a rule number, we expect you to report against that rule number. Any samples that might be related to that, you report against the rule number that's specified. So I know that's a bit confusing. We'll try to fix that in the next version of the rules. It's blank if it's not reported and no samples are expected. So one, if there's no samples expected, but it is reported. Blank if it doesn't need to be reported and no samples expected. There's also a new report supply level column. So there's some general rules that you can actually just tick once and be done for your supply. So 0 means that this has to be reported against all the relevant supply components. But if it's 1, it means you only have to report it once against the whole supply. So there's just a few of these, but it's definitely worth knowing what those few are. And again, you can sort the whole rule summary list by that column and pull out all the ones that are supply level reporting. And you can basically leave that supply component field blank. Minimum buildings, this is a random one from the footnotes 23 and 42. Again, it's a rules by code approach, so we just had to incorporate all of those different little tidbits. I won't go over that one that much because it only applies to a couple of rules. And then this last one is actually really handy. And it allows the building of kind of a better rule builder. So we have a rule builder. We tend to make that better eventually. But yeah, this rule applies column is critical to that. You can basically search for T3 and look at, okay, what what reporting rule IDs do I need to report against for when I'm reporting against T2 rule module? Okay. All right. So we made it to the end. Thanks for listening. Um, we know that especially for level 3 supplies, the reporting is quite a significant task. If you have multiple level 3 supplies, it's even a more significant task. If you have multiple treatment plants, multiple distribution zones, that's even more work. And so we do really understand that, and we want you guys to take care of yourselves first and foremost. If you have issues with, you think you might miss the deadline, you just need to get in touch with your regional team. Okay. We welcome constructive feedback. We expect it. We encourage it. So with that, I think we'll go to questions.
We answered the last one, so we can start from the beginning, Noah. If you
Yeah,
guys have
great.
any additional questions, just send them through.
Yeah. So our first question is AIM exploring. With so many new rule clarifications, when may we expect to see an updated version of the DWQAR? So that's actually the kind of intent of the rule clarifications. It's a heads up for what we're going to correct in the next version of the rules. Jim's already said that we're going to start looking at that in the new year. In terms of how long is that going to take and when can you expect it, I can't really answer that right now. There's some additions we want to make to the rules and we want to get it right. So we're not going to rush the next version of the rules. Not that we rush this version of the rules, not admitting to that, but yeah,
And I understand that any amendments have to go through consultation as well, right,
that's
Noah?
right.
So it's a
It's quite a big
longer
process.
process than we would like, and that's why we have the clarifications page rather than just updating the rules all the time. We'll get there.
You can expect the next version of the rules to be much we've clarified a bunch of these issues. So the next version will incorporate all those, and we won't have any rule clarifications. We'll just have the rules. Should be a great thing. The next question. Yeah, so it's about the old database. So Drinking Water Online automatically calculated whether sampling met compliance requirements, whether required sampling intervals were met or not. Are there any plans to improve Hinokrako, or at least to provide a similar level of functionality? So we are, as Gabby said. Actually, Gabby, do you want to answer that one?
There's a great feedback that we can consider for future improvements. So yeah, if you have great ideas like that, let us know, and then if possible, we are going to make them happen. So great one. But
And the
I'm not aware of having this already in the as an update for the near future, but we can think about that.
we are certainly considering how we display compliance to the public, and we're working through that. So we will let you know, and you'll be kept in the loop if we're notifying the public of that. And what Gabby said is that we intend to release kind of a display to you guys, redisplaying your submitted data in Hinakaraka, so you can check that, you can have access to it, and you know what is going to be reported to the public. Next question. So in completing your template, we are unable to perform edit functions within the table. Will this function be enabled? So it's actually
I
really
replied to
important.
this one already.
Oh, did we? Okay, great.
Yes, official answer directly from the IT team, our data
Perfect.
team. So
Great.
amazing.
That's good. What's the next question we have then? I think from unknown user. Okay. As you mentioned, not all of the drinking water quality assurance rules carries the same weight regarding risk. Is there a forum to submit evidence to a non-compliance against certain rules, similar to how suppliers could discuss technical non-compliance with the DWAs and where DWAs would override the non-compliance as a compliance? Um, so our kind of stance is that there are no technical non-compliances. You're either non-compliant or you are compliant. Um, we won't be assessing your compliance. We certainly won't be overriding your compliance. The one way that, in terms of the display of that compliance, we are definitely thinking about how we display that in a way that's fair for you. And that's partially why we've done this reporting rule ID and split out those requirements so that we can report on the things that are actually important and not the things that are less important. However, you might have a whole bunch of non-compliance for the things that are less important, and that might raise your risk up and have us get in contact with you. Okay. It's a balancing act though. So I do acknowledge that. In terms of submitting evidence, that's up. So it's up to you to hold that evidence. We may come ask you for the evidence of compliance. We're more likely to say, okay, give us some evidence that you've been compliant. You've claimed you're compliant here. Give us that evidence to back it up.
I can reply to this one. So would it be possible to pull a report from the submitted annual report? So at least with the Excel spreadsheets reporting, that is an improvement that we have submitted to our team already. It would be really great if water suppliers could open the annual reports that they have already submitted. And the same for other kinds of documents that you have to submit, like any document in notifications or anything that you submit as part of your drinking water safety plan, you should be able to open it. So we are already working with our team on this one, and hopefully we will be able to make it happen. Now, if it's a submission through an API, I am not too sure, then you'd have to check this with what Outlook infrastructure, data, or any other provider if it's possible to pull it back.
I'll just add to that a little bit. In essence, all the data that you submit to us, we have captured. Even old reports, we capture that information, but we have ways of choosing the right information. So the most recent information, the most relevant information. In terms of you and your reporting, I would, until and if we have functionality for you to download reports, I would highly suggest you keep your own reports because you're the ones telling us the information. So those reports contain all the information that you'll need to know.
Yeah, and at the moment, if you are unsure if the report that you submitted is correct or not, you can always resubmit it. So if you still can't open it, at least you can resubmit one that you think it's now correct, at least for now.
A good one from Jessica, and I probably won't be able to answer here, but I can comment on a little bit. When we were talking about accuracy of results, Water Outlook does not have functionality to change non-compliances to compliant or vice versa, where the raw shows this is incorrect. So you might have some raw data. It might have had a blip where someone checked a pH value. The general rules are really important for this. So we go into this in the guidance. So it's really important for you to read the guidance, especially on those general rules. Rather than restating it right here, I'd prefer you just go read the guidance because it is quite nuanced. But essentially, you are allowed to override certain amounts of data within the limits of the rules. We also have a clarification coming out around this as well, but the guidance goes over all that as well. Ooh, good, we're getting lots of questions. Really good question though, and if Water Outlook needs to get in touch with us regarding that, happy to have those conversations. Or if you as a supplier want to get in touch, you can do that as well. We won't be changing your reporting though. So that is one thing I can be very clear about. Your reporting is your responsibility. Okay, another question, is there any intent to change and broaden which rules are reported on monthly in the future? Yeah, and in going through this process, there's probably a few rules that I think probably dropped off people's radars, but shouldn't have. Just because you're not required to report to us monthly doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at it every day. There are certain limits and thresholds that you should be meeting every day, and you should be checking every day that you are meeting. And if you get to the end of the year and you've only done one check, it's probably not a great system that you have. We may move some of those annual reporting, particularly the monitoring rules. We might move some of those into the monthly space. I think we just wanted to introduce you to this kind of new step change reporting. So that's why we did very limited amount. I will not answer any information on the DIA, only because I just don't have oversight of that. But I can tell you we have identified that issue and we are working through it. So it's on our radar where you have DIA audits. We don't want two pieces of information saying different things. So we are aware of that. Aaron Green just stated that we don't assess your compliance. It's really starting to feel like here are the rules, meet them, tell us how.
why, and then you only care and get involved when something goes wrong. We'll the goalposts throughout the year, and you will need to keep checking our website. Not sure there's a question there, Aaron. But yes, you have to assess your compliance with the rules. We have limited capacity and cannot assess 700 supplies for compliance. It's just would be impractical. And the Water Services Act is very clear about where that responsibility sits. Kathy, do you send out notification when you update the clarifications or add anything useful info to your website? We probably could be better at doing this, but consider this your kind of notification right now that there'll be a new update to the website imminently, especially the clarifications website. We tend to do that through all of our contacts, but hopefully most people know the rule clarifications website. We also kind of depend on you guys to spread the word because we don't have contacts for everybody. We have contacts for water suppliers. It's important to update your key contact information in Hinakarako. You can add multiple of those key contacts, and that's really who we get in touch with. So if you're not getting in touch with it, get in touch with your local team and we'll work through what you need to do to get on those email lists. Certain emails are aimed at certain levels of organizations as well. So there's a bit to work through on that.
Yeah, last time that we updated the clarifications page, we emailed everybody that's in our mailing list. So if you identify that anybody should be there who is not, please let us know. So we'll add this person to the mailing list, and we'll try to make some work to ensure that everybody who needs to be there is there. Yeah, but we need your help as well, so that we make sure that everybody that's important and needs to know about this get to know about this.
Yep, Leon has replied to that one. If Kathy's mentioned one, if an external audit has found us compliant for DIA audit, is this evidence we could use for reporting to TA? It's up to you, but absolutely. If you choose to do that, but that's your choice, right? So you got to own your supply. It's your supply. You know the most about it. You know whether that audit is accurate or not. But not a bad idea. Have another unknown user. Is there a way to submit feedback and to upvote others' feedback so that all suppliers are working together with TA to make the, ooh, I like that idea. We really want to make this reporting useful, and we want to do it together as a sector. It's not just, we don't want it just to be for us. If we can make it dual purpose for you guys as well, those are things that we need to consider.
And the email address that you can use, yes, great. Thank you, Liana. We have just published it again. So please, any specific questions, just send them through this email, the email address, and we'll get back to you. Awesome, 2 p.m., right on time. Anything to add, Noah?
Nope, not for me. I
Perfect.
think we've answered all the questions in the chat. If we didn't, get in touch.
And this webinar, again, is going to be available online. So if you need to rewatch it or give it to other people in your organization, just go ahead and do that. Thank you so much. Kia ora, you guys have a great day.